Brazil has initiated a new phase in its climate policy after President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva ordered his government to produce a national roadmap for reducing the country's dependence on fossil fuels. The directive, issued through a presidential decree published in the official Gazette, follows commitments Brazil made during COP30 in Belém in November. The roadmap will guide a gradual transition away from oil, gas, and coal and outline how Brazil intends to meet its international climate responsibilities despite strong headwinds both at home and abroad. The order instructs the Ministries of Finance, Environment and Climate Change, Mines and Energy, and the Chief of Staff's office to work jointly on technical guidelines. These guidelines must include the creation of an energy transition fund financed through oil revenues. Brazil, currently the largest oil producer in Latin America, aims to demonstrate that a major fossil fuel producing nation can still commit to long-term decarbonisation while continuing to call on other governments to voluntarily adopt similar measures. The plan is expected within 60 days and will later be reviewed by the National Energy Policy Council, an advisory body within the federal government. The push for a fossil fuel roadmap traces directly back to developments at COP30, where Brazil faced opposition from oil-producing states including Saudi Arabia, Iran and Russia. Despite that resistance, Brazilian officials insisted on placing the issue on the global agenda and pledged that Brazil would provide its own national plan, even if consensus could not be reached at the conference. At COP30, Lula framed the outcome as evidence of renewed international cooperation on climate action. During remarks delivered in Johannesburg on November 22, he described the moment facing the global community. In his words, in the year when the planet surpassed for the first time and perhaps permanently the limit of 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, the international community faced a choice. To continue or to give up, we chose the first option. At the COP of Truth, science prevailed. Multilateralism won. Scenes from the COP30 venue in Belém reflected both the symbolic and political weight of the gathering, with wide shots of the conference site at night, close-ups of Brazil's flag, and images of Brazil's Environment Minister Marina Silva approaching the closing plenary session. Delegates and observers filled the hall as discussions concluded, and applause marked the final moments of negotiations. During the closing session, COP30 President André Correia do Lago addressed participants and emphasized the importance of ongoing work beyond the negotiated text. In a brief statement, he said, "Friends, I know that most of you are tired, but as president of this conference, it is my duty to recognize some very important discussions that took place in Belém and that needs to continue during the Brazilian presidency until the next COP, even if they are not reflected in this text we just approved." Lula returned to the central themes of COP30 when he addressed the international community again later that day. He highlighted the reaffirmation of the Paris Agreement and the updated framework of nationally determined contributions. The Brazilian president noted the broad participation that shaped the event, stating, "We reaffirmed our commitment to the Paris Agreement. We left Belém with a renewed framework of nationally determined contributions. We mobilized civil society, academia, the private sector, indigenous peoples and social movements, making COP30 the COP with the second highest participation in history." Delegates gathered once more for the final plenary, where Correia do Lago expanded on his earlier message. He called for structured planning to guide global climate action, explaining that the world must outline steps for a transition away from fossil fuels. In his words, "We need roadmaps so that humanity, in a just and planned manner, can overcome its dependence on fossil fuels, halt and reverse deforestation, and mobilize resources for these purposes. I, as president of COP30, will therefore create 2 roadmaps, one on halting and reverting deforestation, another to transitioning away from fossil fuels in a just, orderly, and equitable manner." Applause followed the announcement. His statement signaled that although COP30 did not secure agreement from all countries on fossil fuel language, Brazil was prepared to move forward domestically and to lead discussions internationally during its presidency of the next climate cycle. The decision to produce two distinct roadmaps, one focused on deforestation and another on the fossil fuel transition, reflected the dual priorities Brazil presented at the conference: protecting the Amazon and signaling readiness to confront dependence on oil and gas. Back in Brasilia, Lula's decree formalized these intentions into government action. The document directs relevant ministries to develop guidelines for reducing fossil fuel dependence while considering economic, social, and environmental impacts. One of the central elements of the upcoming plan is the Energy Transition Fund. This fund would redirect a portion of oil revenues toward policies supporting clean energy development, new technologies, and long-term structural adjustments across the energy sector. The initiative aims to use resources generated from fossil fuel production to finance the country's shift away from them. The roadmap is expected to address not only decarbonisation goals, but also the practical challenges associated with a transition in a country where oil extraction represents a major source of revenue and employment. Brazil's dual identity as both a climate-focused state and a significant petroleum producer has shaped its approach at recent UN climate negotiations. Policymakers have argued that Brazil can simultaneously expand renewable energy, maintain economic stability, and push for a managed, globally coordinated shift away from fossil fuels. During COP30, officials repeatedly stressed that Brazil would maintain constructive pressure on the international community to advance the issue. The government also underscored its intention to ensure that any transition must be equitable and take into account the economic disparities between countries with differing levels of development and reliance on fossil fuel income. The involvement of the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and the Chief of Staff's office reflects the multidimensional nature of the challenge. Finance officials will assess the fiscal mechanisms needed to support the transition fund. The Environment Ministry will oversee climate considerations and alignment with Brazil's international commitments. The Mines and Energy Ministry will evaluate the economic and technical dimensions of reducing the use of fossil fuels across the national energy matrix. Coordination with the Chief of Staff ensures that the policy aligns with wider government strategy. The timeline specified by the decree gives ministries 60 days to finalise proposals, after which the National Energy Policy Council will conduct an assessment. The Council's review will help determine whether the roadmap is viable, adequately resourced, and consistent with broader national policies. Only after this review will the government release the final version to the public and begin the implementation phase. The creation of this roadmap also comes as global climate discussions intensify following confirmation that global temperatures have exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Lula referenced this milestone directly in his Johannesburg remarks, underscoring the urgency Brazil sees in accelerating international climate action. Throughout COP30, opposition from major fossil fuel producers prevented consensus on stronger language regarding oil and gas phase-outs. Nevertheless, Brazil used its position as host nation to elevate the issue, arguing that without clear and measurable plans, the world risks falling further behind in efforts to control warming. Brazilian officials acknowledge the political sensitivities involved, but maintain that national-level commitments could still contribute to global momentum, even without a unified negotiating outcome. The Roadmap initiative also marks a strategic moment for Brazil as it prepares for future climate diplomacy. By setting out its own transition plan, Brazil aims to position itself as a bridge actor, simultaneously engaged in major fossil fuel production while pursuing long-term decarbonisation targets and advocating for structured global cooperation. As the country awaits the final roadmap, Brazil's ministries are now focused on drafting measures that can balance economic reality with environmental goals. Policymakers must determine how quickly Brazil can reduce fossil fuel reliance while maintaining energy security, managing employment impacts, and sustaining public revenue. The Energy Transition Fund will be a central tool for addressing these challenges, providing financial support for renewable energy projects, grid modernization, and research and development for emerging technologies. The coming weeks will determine whether Brazil can align its climate ambitions with the practical steps required for a large-scale transition. The government's ability to develop a coherent, technically robust plan will shape both domestic energy policy and Brazil's credibility in upcoming climate negotiations. Brazil has now tied its climate leadership to the roadmap it intends to release, and the review process by the National Energy Policy Council will be a key indicator of how rapidly the transition could proceed. For now, the government's directive stands as the primary follow-through on commitments made at COP30. The Brazilian government is now moving from pledges to policy, with the success of its energy transition plan resting on the roadmap scheduled for release in the coming weeks.